I think it is important, even if you're a one-person shop, you do want to have someone who can protect you from yourself. I had management meetings last week, and one of my partners is my mentor, and he does exactly that. He says, "You're crazy. You don't want to do that." And he's probably right.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Baker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here today with another episode of the Mission Driven Podcast. Through this podcast, I'm speaking with mission-driven entrepreneurs, investors, academics, the ecosystem about the challenges we face, but more importantly, the work that we're doing to bring solutions to these challenges. In this episode, I'm extremely honored to be joined by Reese Tisdale, who's the founder of Bluefield Research, a leading research and advisory firm focused on renewable energy. And he's the host of the Future of Water podcast. But most importantly, he is a fellow Thunderbird alumni. And it's great to see another Thunderbird joining the flock in terms of sustainability. So Reese, thank you very much for taking the time.
Hey, Rich, great to see you. Yeah, this is awesome. And I look forward to this. Our paths have sort of run parallel on opposite sides of the world in many respects. And so in common interest. So I look forward to this.
All right. So as a starting point, a little bit about your background and what's the mission that you're on?
I'm a market researcher. We started Bluefield Research as a market research firm that really is developed, in a pithy way, is to empower decision makers to make more data-backed or data-driven decisions in terms of water and wastewater management. And that is everything from municipal sector, the industrial sector. It's a big topic which we can get into, but that's really the key point of it all.
And how did you come into the space to begin with? Have you always been in sustainability? You coming from the economics? What drove you into it?
I'm interested in other parts of the world, quite honestly. And as you can imagine, water touches everything everywhere. That's part of it. And then I've sort of met the right person, right place, right time as things work out. And we started doing market research in the renewable energy sector, more focused on things like clean tech. That would be solar, wind, geothermal. And then eventually that company was sold. And then we were sort of posed with a question, like, what's next? Where else would you focus? What's an interesting area or, I guess, segment that would be, we could do something similar where there's a need for information and insights. There's a need for data, but also there's just not a lot of competition, quite honestly. And the water sector kind of hit all of those buttons. And back to my first point, it's global. We didn't really think it was going to, while I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, we really didn't think it was going to be so heavy in the US. Not to say it would be, but actually it's both, right? And there are different problems everywhere.
What's the size and scope of the water challenge as you see it? Like, what are some of the major factors? What are some of the major regions? And how do you look at this? Because it's such a big challenge. Like, what's the size and scope for you? And are there certain sectors that, because it's so big, you have to focus on, or you think they're really common pain points to be worked on?
I think that probably that question is the biggest challenge from our perspective, is where does it start and where does it end? And as you can imagine, if you look at developed markets, infrastructure is already in place. Let's say the US or Europe, we've had infrastructure in place for 150 years. That's water treatment, wastewater treatment. You look at developing markets, whether it be sub-Saharan Africa or Latin America, it's the challenge is more than anything, it's more greenfield, right? As a big new build, connecting people. So that's really a common or a sort of a way to bifurcate the market as a whole. But most of our focus partly is because that's where the money is and that's where the interest is, and the market research and consultative services is the US. So in dollar terms, I think the combined capital and operating expenditures for those two regions, that'd be US and Canada and Europe, is about $250 to $300 billion per year. That's just for the muni sector. And then the industrial sector, which is far more complicated. We look at about 15 different industrial verticals. That's everything from mining to food and bev, to data centers, to semiconductors, to pulp and paper. The challenge is they don't really speak to one another. They're all operate their own silos. And so there's the commonality, maybe the water treatment, the water solutions, and the strategies to get to them. But it's not like within the municipal sector, you have reuse and you have desalination It's all somewhat homogenous and more publicly funded.
So yeah, I was going to ask. So is the client for municipal tending to be the cities themselves, and why are they coming to you? Are they coming for insights into the challenge they face, or do they already know the challenge? Then they're just actually trying to identify the solution providers, create the budgets, and then actually the planning from there.
So I would say when we look at it, the value chain, our clients, technology vendors, hardware and equipment suppliers, engineering design, construction companies, private utilities, some publics, corporates, some of those, and then private equity or the financial side of the equation.
And then what's the service that you're providing to them?
So we really hit it three different ways. So we sell reports off the shelf. Anybody can buy a report. As I would tell anybody, that's the candy. It's sort of the cheap market entry product for us, at least. On top of that, we provide subscriptions, simply put, and these are annual retainer-based services where you get access to all the respective reports for the U.S. municipal sector, water M&A and company strategies, digital water, industrial, Europe water. And so you get you get those services, and some clients buy all of them, some just buy one, depending on their interest. But they get the reports, they get access to the analysts, they get the data, and it's a relationship. And so it's really a subscription where you can access and ask questions. We will meet with you. We go to I have a board meeting with a client next week to talk through questions. The third piece or third leg of the stool would be consulting. So there are questions that come our way or to the clients where they say, we know what you have, but what we're really interested in, we understand the US market. This is our specific question, or this is our specific challenge. And it could be, we want to enter the US market, or we want to enter Southeast Asia. Can you help us figure out what does that market landscape look like? Who would be our competitors? What are the opportunities? What are the risks going forward? So three legs. So the market entry reports, the subscription services, which quite honestly are our bread and butter. They're recurring revenue for us. And then the consultative services.
And are there some common areas that you tend to focus your analysis around? Is it water pricing? Is it water quality? Is it regulation? Like, what are some of the common things, and what are some of the trends that people are like regularly trying to stay a hold of versus like the long-term ones, like, yeah, we'll check in every couple of years?
Yeah, I would say when it comes to what we provide and do well and what our core is, one would be the business strategies and competitive analysis. How are companies moving in and out or along the value chain in the water industry itself? Policy, as you can imagine, when it comes to water, policy is sort of it's definitely not the carrot. It's more the stick than anything else. So as you'll see, a lot of entities, municipal or industrial, they're driven by what the regulators say. And and in the case of, let's say, the U.S. now, there's so much uncertainty with the current, administration, but also Congress, as well as Supreme Court decisions. That has a huge impact on what companies need to prepare for. Do they need to prepare for more stringent water quality standards, or are they anticipating a pullback in some respects?
And then I guess, the question for me is like, is it economics and policy that's driving things more you see these days, or is it, say, the mega trends of climate change, drought, urbanization, and who's drawing off the water tables? Like, what's driving the market towards investment or away from investment?
Yeah, I think it cuts a couple different ways. And let's just focusing on the industrial side of the equation, whether you're a food and beverage manufacturer, you're discharging into, a river, or, you're in Arizona, or you're in China for that matter. They have bottom lines, right? And so particularly if they're in water scarce regions, they are being challenged by just the underlying cost of either procuring the water or treating the water. At a high level from the executive boardroom, we're seeing corporate sustainability goals and targets. And increasingly, we're seeing water incorporated into that. It's not just carbon anymore, moving to include water. So that's part of it. So I would say sort of the top-down sustainability goals, the cost, but also it's not the primary driver, it's a benefit. When you look at industry itself, you can almost look at what industry it is and how they're responding. So if it's a very brand focused or customer facing product or company, so it could be Heineken or Pepsi or Coca-Cola, companies like that, they're going to be more forthcoming and more aggressive in at least announcing targets and making moves. Whereas if you go to the mining sector, the oil and gas, they're removed from the customer. They will be doing things purely on a cost basis. And I think everybody should be, quite honestly. That really is, that's the number one determinant. But the brand uh, impact does influence.
Can you talk through a little bit more, because I think a lot of people think that, we need to have regulation and subsidies to get things started, but eventually the market needs to take over. Like, what's your view? And are there signals of like when the market's ready to just take this on itself? I mean, I can say like a pure market economy, like, look, just let it go, and that way you're long term stronger. But in the short term, you're trying to solve some of these issues. Like, what's the trade off for you? Short term realities versus long term, kind of what we need.
I think what's a little disturbing in some respects is you do see companies that are active in extremely water scarce areas or regions, and they propose a new facility, could be a semiconductor fab. What's the life of that facility? Is it only 20 years? So they may only care about years 1 to 20. They don't really care. That's their responsibility to care about year 21. It's up to the someone has to protect us from ourselves at some point. I am a believer in that. But that being said, if they do see operational risk and they anticipate to be in a market for a long time, they will implement things like wastewater reuse, just being more efficient when it comes to water. If they do have carbon goals and I mean, at the end of the day, if you sort of look at the numbers, water represents 2 to 5% of global carbon emissions in and of itself. So that is one way. The less water you use, the less you treat, you can deal with that.
But I would also I link water to energy industry itself more directly and be like, a large part of the carbon footprint directly related to energy is because of intensive water use type energies. If you were to switch your energy package to more solar, you're gonna have a significantly lower water footprint. And I guess my question is like, how much do people think at that level? Like, that's something that like you can get really wonky, and we've been in this a long time, and we can make that, but I've talked to the president of GE Energy years and years ago and said, do you sell water efficiency when you sell energy efficiency? He's like, why would I do that? I'm like, well, in a water scarce area, that might be a nice deal breaker.
The public doesn't think much about it. I mean, we just released a report about the energy transition. What does it mean for water? What does it mean switching to renewables? And then it gets even more complicated when you bring in AI and the role of AI and its demand on the power sector. Power demand in the US is, for all intents and purposes, it's been flat for the last couple decades. It's grown so slowly. It's incredibly mature. We've had a big out of natural gas. But what has ended up happening is AI may create a spike. And so then the question is, okay, if the power sector needs to meet that demand, is there going to be more natural gas? Are we going to, instead of decommissioning coal plants, we'll keep them running? Will it usher in a new wave of nuclear power? All of which use water. Solar doesn't, obviously. Wind doesn't, but all the others do. Hydrogen does. Hydrogen is sort of the Swiss Army knife of renewables that holds a lot of hope and interest for people. But I don't think that that's the case. I think people think more of it in an isolated need or silo rather than, here's the broader picture, because it's like a daisy chain. It's all connected. And that's why the term water energy nexus is so popular, because it does cut both ways.
So then getting to your products, you've got, the three that you have. I guess you have a bit of a freemium model when it comes to say newsletters and research and things like that. Like you kind of give some candy away before you can get the whole thing. How do you orient and how do you build product that way? Did you start off with the newsletter and start off with the research knowing that business would come, or did you use the business to spin off research knowing that would help to create the flywheel? Like how did you get started, and what have you found over the years is really productive in terms of the types of research or the types of content that people want?
Because we're a knowledge-based organization, we just started with we developed a business plan, but it was okay. Let's write a report. Let's start there. Let's plant a flag, so we can build it. And quite honestly, it was global desalination. And so we were looking at what are the business strategies in that space. And that was really the start. So that was the primary focus. Let's start there. And along the way, we would put out, we have a complementary, it's complementary in the sense of it aligns or supports the report. And there's research notes, as we call them. So they're 1-2 page briefs on certain things so we were able to sort of build as we went, as we saw developed insights, as news happened, and we still do that today, write these research notes and they go out to clients. That was really the main part. And then you just let people know in a weekly email or newsletter, if you will, say, hey, here's what's happening. This is what we're seeing. It's amazingly thin at first when you're starting out, and it's just a couple of us, right, at the time. I think, the most important part of all of it, I would say, was, and I think we're pretty strong to this day, is just being disciplined. You commit to it because it's easy to develop too many products. And the problem is the client doesn't know where you're coming from or what you're doing. It's really being very disciplined and developing discrete deliverables, as we would call them, whether it be research notes or reports or blog posts or podcasts. Those are different channels to get information out. But at the same time, making sure that we can deliver, but the clients can understand it.
Yeah, I started Collective with a very similar idea, and I think we put out maybe a dozen to 15 reports. The consistency was the challenge, like maintaining the process for delivering that and having the staff. I brought in someone and I really tasked him early. And, he was young and he did a really great job off the start. But then like the overwhelming amount of speed that we needed, and we couldn't remain. And part of that was just I realized like it's focus. It's coming down to like one or two things that you get really good at, and then you find ways to break it up into ways that makes it look a lot more robust.
Right. And I would like to think that it's as easy as it sounds. It's not, we've gone down a number of dead end alleys. I would say probably the most important part of the process is I have a great group of partners. We'd worked together in the past. I have one partner who I actually used to work for, was my boss. And if anything, he's a mentor, and he's probably the one person that protects me from myself. As an entrepreneur, as someone you see what other people are doing, you hear questions. That's the beauty of all of this. Curiosity is the driver, and you see what others are doing, and ooh, that could be successful. And next thing you know, you're doing 5 different things that you can't keep up with. And so that's probably one of the most important pieces of the whole puzzle, is someone that is independent of the day-to-day operations and questions, who can say, what are you doing, Reese? This is a terrible idea.
I mean, I am the worst example of that. I have too many things going on, and to the point where it's just I have a meeting and people are like, so what do you do? Like, you can do it all, but what do you want to focus on? That's my Achilles heel.
No, it is. And it's at the same time, could I say that we've made it? I don't, I'll never say that. I don't know what made it is, but I would say it's worked, right? I think we've built up a brand, we've built up a business, and we built up a knowledge base that I don't think a lot of people have in a area.
How long is your team stayed with you roughly? And I asked this in the context of when I started Collective, I had a really great team, 2.5, 3 years. Then I had a kind of a refresh, reboot, 2.5, 3 years. Then I had a refresh. Like I felt like there was a cycle, but as I've learned to focus, I found that refresh, reboot process, it extends, because not only do our clients know what we're doing, the team knows what we're doing, and they can feel more secure in what they're doing. So it's easier to maintain. And I'm just finding, like, do you think about that? Is that something you're finding? Is that something you're intentional about?
I don't know if I'd say intentional. I would say the hardest part of the whole business is probably HR. You want to give people opportunities. You want people to grow. I mean, the first person we hired on day one, we hired an analyst to support us, and she was with us for 7 or 8 years. And that was huge. If she'd only been with us for 1 or 2, I'm not sure we'd be where we are today. What ends up happening is some of them get hired by our clients. And, there's upside downside of that. The downside is we lose people along the way that are incredibly valuable. They're experienced. They know what we do. At the same time, they're going to clients. So we've demonstrated with their help that we deliver good insights and we're professional in how we go about things.
Now,
You
do
know,
they come back to you for more business? Do you find that your old employees are then employing you because they're like, hey, we know they can do the best work, or have you been unable to make that connection?
they do. And, so what that's bittersweet when someone leaves and then you turn around and say, hey, I need an answer to this question. And it was like, wait a second, you were the one answering that question. And it's a good problem to have. It's all about because we're very relationship based. Like I said, the reports are they're static. You buy a report, they go. Consulting is usually project driven. Uh, Not that clients don't come back for more consulting, but the retainer based subscription services, they're really valuable to us. I mean, I can project my renewal rates out for 5 years, right? So I kind of have where we're going. So, if someone goes to a client and it creates even more stickiness with that client, I'm I'm 100% on board.
Getting back to product development a little bit, how do you know when it's time to focus on a new topic around water? Is it you just keep hearing it from clients, or you develop a research brief that's 2 pages, gets a lot of attraction, or hey, the EU is coming up with this thing, so we're going to write around it? Like, what helps you kind of understand which products you need to bring to the market, and what's your testing process?
I think on a tactical level, it's really client driven. What are clients asking? Because that's who we're here to serve. And if we have enough mass or momentum from multiple clients in their questions, then we begin to address it. So, and it can be, like I said, we have different channels to approach it. It could just be a podcast. I think more broadly, as we launch new products, it could be, we kind of look at we have 6 subscription services, right? It's not going to be obvious to the outsider, but the US and Canada municipal service, it's like probably our heaviest service as far as data, content, and interest, quite honestly. It's a point where it's getting so heavy. What needs to come out of that? Do we need to spin off a policy service? And it's because there's growing interest from clients in the policy piece, but also the Trump administration has, got everybody's hair on fire. So maybe there's something there. So we start to experiment and we send out sort of trial balloons through the community service to say, here's a quarter policy update. Is this interesting? And then, we use website traffic, we use, conversations with clients to figure that out. And we sort of roadmap it out over. And then that's when you start shifting towards strategic, where it's, okay, what does our 1 year plan look like? What does it look like for 18 to 24 to 36 months?
Now, it sounded like the membership is, I mean, it's easier for you, more predictable. So when you're putting these out, is it your mind to bring in more consulting projects or more memberships? Or like, do you think about it to that degree? Or do you just figure out like, we just want to deliver more value and just see where that falls?
We're all about the memberships from our own business because we think that's the best bang for the buck, quite honestly. Plus, we get ongoing access to client questions over the course of a year, or in some cases, we do multiple year agreements where they may stretch at 3 years. Best clients or the best engagements are those that are existing subscription clients and they do consulting, because sometimes you're not only you get the long-term value, but you also get the consulting, from our perspective, you get the cash flows, but you also engage with them at a more specific level where it's driven, it's a negotiated scope and you're working on a specific problem with the client. So that's the win-win, at least as far as
Tying the products together with the growth of your employees, do you find that putting them on research is a great way to be building them into consultants? And I've been advising with one client right now is like, build your research team, sell research, build a consulting practice, and then use one to subsidize the other. Like you're going to grow this way, but that cash will help you fuel like the premium type work, and then you can deliver into actual execution. Similar model, or have you built different walls?
Yeah, I think the core starts from our research, right? That's where the knowledge, the data is built. As far as a team goes, just because of the volume, We try to have analysts who are they're essentially subject matter experts. Some will just focus on municipal, some just on heavy industry, some light industry, some just on digital, some just on company strategies. The consulting, ideally, and this is difficult, right, when you're doing both, because you need the consultants to be aligned with the research. You can't have the consultants go out and redo a forecast of the pulp and paper market because they feel it's different than what the research team says. That's not how it works. So there needs to be tight collaboration between the two. And then we do have people who primarily do consulting. That's their number one job, both in Europe and the US. And then if there's a lull in their activities, or if they have really good insights from a consulting project that can help influence the research or research agenda, they can help feed that knowledge, at least for perspectives.
When it comes to that team, how many of them have to be passionate about water? Like, is that a kind of requirement for you, a passion for water, for energy, in terms of like the sustainability mindset? Or are you looking for economists and supply chain and like, technicians who are just really good at understanding the information of, taking policy and process and creating great reports and great consulting?
In our research and working with clients, we're talking about the issues related to water, but we're really trying to solve business problems, right? Whether it's for a supply chain company or it could be utility. Here's what the solutions are you could consider, or here's what other utilities are doing. Climate is definitely a key. Environmental sustainability is an underlying driver, and companies are pushing in that direction in many respects. And so what we're trying to figure out is, okay, if that's the cornerstone of the discussion, what are the solutions?
If you take the body of work that you've been working on and you're to add kind of an advocacy lens here and say, like, look, we've got a big water problem here. You flip that into an opportunity. Like, what are some sectors or some areas that you think are ripe for deployments, innovations, investments right now? Like, where would you be putting your money or pointing people towards fix this? This is a great space to be in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
I alluded to this earlier. I mean, the hottest segment, and just based on client feedback, interest, but you sort of see it in the numbers, that is data, and whether that's related to artificial intelligence or just, the Internet of Things and sort of data. So data centers. So this sort of the high tech sectors are big. Food and beverage is always interesting. One, because of the need for food and beverage. It's incredibly fragmented. It's different than those high tech sectors in the sense, because of its fragmentation, it also presents an opportunity for, tier two, tier three players to get into that market. If you're in high tech or even pharmaceutical, which is another hot one, they're usually going to go, it's so capital intensive, but also the risk profile is so high for those companies. They're going to go for the big fish, the big solutions providers. Food and beverage offers a different kind of opportunity, whether it be for breweries, whether it be for small food manufacturers. So that's,
I guess, future trends. What do you see coming in the water sector for businesses, and how should they create defensive strategy, reduce risk, or drive innovation and take this as an opportunity? Like, what are the regions you're worried about? What's going to drive them to be much more focused on solving the water challenges, and how does that translate into your business?
yeah, I think, I wish I'd coined this term, as someone had said, if climate is the shark, water is the teeth. And it's true. When you look at the climate data, 75 to 80% of all climatic events, whether it be storms, hurricanes, et cetera, are water related in one way or another. That's the externality that, everybody sees happening. And so how do you protect yourself against that? And you could be a city, if you're a facility in a certain region, a drought scarce region, Phoenix, right? We both live there. The city said you have to have 100-year supply of water to build anything, a community over X number of homes or a commercial facility. So you have to, build that into your, in your business plan. Like, how are we going to deal with this? And I think that's what's changed. Quite honestly, I'm not going to say it never existed, but we're seeing that change over the last 10 to 15 years, at Bluefield itself, we can tell by the types of questions that people are asking that it's real. It's really a bottom line operational risk. On the municipal side or city or government side of it gets a little bit scarier because if our political leaders, wherever they may be, if they're not looking out for our best interest, and they're playing the short game, because it does get very political, right? And yeah, and so that could be as simple as water rates. If it's an election season, a mayor, a city manager, they may not want to even raise rates because they may be held accountable for that in the election. So that's where it gets a little scary. So if they're not looking out for our best interests, I'm a little concerned. And you see things like whether it be Cape Town, they had their day zero. There's Mexico City. They had their problems this past year, and that has not gone away. We see in Taipei has significant droughts. When you're trucking in water to serve your population or industry, if I'm there, I would certainly be talking to someone about installing things like a reuse system. It's kind of like solar, putting solar on your roof. If you're concerned about the power grid, well, at the very least, put a, solar panels on your roof and maybe even a battery for backup, a power wall or something.
Have some resilience. Well, I mean, and with that knowledge, how do you look at building your firm over, say, the next 5 years? Like, is the goal to get bigger in scale? Is the goal to expand the portfolio? Is it to focus on certain trends? Like, because there's so much happening, how do you look at the next 5 years for your group?
Yeah, so I would say, currently we're really strong in the US, we're really strong in Europe. We've done a lot of work around the world. So we're exploring ways to grow geographically. So that's sort of one angle if you look at it on a matrix. And then there are a couple topic areas. Corporate sustainability is not something we have a service or a specific product for. That's tied to industry. We've looked at that. We've looked at technology. And over the course of a decade, the question is that something that stands out on its own? Another area is just agriculture, right? I mean, if there's an elephant in the room, it would be ag, around the world. That's 70% of water use. The question is how big is that? How addressable is the market? And so it's not going to be 70% of water use is the addressable market. It's going to be a slice of that. Maybe it's just for us at Bluefield. Maybe it's just smart irrigation players, or maybe it's, satellite companies, could be seed companies in the agriculture sector, in basic service providers rather than, we're not going to go door to door and sell to farmers. And so that's the challenge, right? The water market is so vast, is finding what are those seams of opportunity, if you were to put it in geological terms, like where can we carve out? It's kind of like an analogy would be telecommunications, huge market. But at one point, mobile telephony was really the opportunity because it was a leapfrog opportunity in places like sub-Saharan Africa. So can we find something like that in water? And that's what we continue to look for. We don't have to be everything to everybody. We just have to really good at what we do for a group of highly interested, highly engaged, companies and organizations.
And on that, a final question. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs who are looking at starting an agency or a knowledge-based organization? Like they have to take their first steps. They're already kind of maybe they're spinning out of a corporate environment where they're kind of known already and people are calling them for research. How would you kind of advise someone looking to start a firm, to find their niche and to get going?
Little steps make a big difference, right? And so you just have to plant the flag. What are the 5 things that are of interest that you think are of interest? Secondly, and maybe even prior to my first point, and that is you do have to talk to the market, see if it's their interest in what you're doing. That's where it gets a little bit scary. Ideally, you have an idea that hopefully no one has seen, or at least how you're doing it. So you're either doing something completely new, or you're adding value to something that may exist, but that other product is not delivering on. And then I already said this. I think it is important, even if you're a one person shop, you do want to have someone who can protect you from yourself. There will always be people that'll say no, but you need someone who you can trust, who can say, Here's how you could do it. And just to bounce questions off of. I think that's
Yeah.
really the most important part. At least it was for me and still is to this day. I had management meetings last week, and one of my partners is my mentor, and he does exactly that. He says, "You're crazy. You don't want to do that." And he's probably right.